So we're here at our layout view. We have made it a little simple locator map. We have our title up here. We have space on this right-hand column to put our north arrow, our legend, our scale bar, and we have a little bit of space left as well to create a chart. And the kind of chart we want to create essentially shows within this map frame here, what percentage of the historic buildings are vulnerable to flood and which ones are safe from floods, right? So, and for that type of binary representation, a pie chart works pretty well. If we had multiple variables, 3 or more variables, I typically would go with a bar chart. But for that kind of conditional yes/no binary variable, a pie chart works great. So what I'm going to do to create a pie chart, I'm going to go here, right-click Building Footprints, go to Chart, Pie Chart, and this is going to bring up my chart building tool. The category that I want, right, is the vulnerable buildings, right? This is the conditional variable we made where the building was both in the flood zone and a historic building. So right now the numeric field is taking that into all the buildings in the building footprint layer. Let's change that instead to just the historic buildings, right? So this chart is saying within the entirety of our data set, the 53% of our buildings are safe from flood risk and 46% are vulnerable. So one thing to note in that is, let me close this up real quick and I'll show you. Our bookmark is set here, right, to this neighborhood, which is kind of the most vulnerable out of this whole data set. If we were to scroll, right, this whole data set includes all these buildings as well, right? It's taking the entire building footprint layer. And so there's a bunch of buildings that are not necessarily as much in this flood zone as our map frame, our active map frame that's in our layout view, right? So if we go back to here, that's going to show us just what's our map frame that we're seeing, right? So keep that in mind as we open up this chart here. This is going to tell us one thing, right? That's not necessarily going to translate one-to-one to our layout because our layout is looking at a subset of that data. So when this changes, what it's changing is it's capturing this data just for the map frame that we have active in our layout. So one thing to keep in mind, which in some situations that could cause issue, in other situations that'll be totally fine. It kind of depends on how you lay out your chart and how you bring it into your layout. So I'll go through a couple things here that can help customize this. So first thing I'll show you, right, is if we go to the layout and we go to insert chart frame, we can see that we're going to insert this chart. And I pull it in here and it's just going to come in like a one-to-one representation of that. And you can see within this that the variables have changed, right? Now the amount that are at risk is 60%, which accounts for what is in this active frame, and 40% not vulnerable. So that changes a little bit, what our data analysis of the entire data set showed. So that could be an issue depending on how you want to visualize or what kind of customization you want of your chart. Okay, so we'll go back into the chart properties, go to your map view, chart properties, and there's a whole bunch of different things you can do here to customize how this looks. We can go to our slices, and let's change our slices so they match the color. So we'll change this as the no variable, we'll just change this to the same color as the historic buildings, and we'll change this flood risk to the same as our layer here. Okay, so now you have your color of your chart matches the variables in your data. We have our labels over here. We can go no flood risk here, for instance, and then flood risk. Right, that's going to change our variables over here. We're in our layout view. we can see how this changes in real time. Let's change this. Maybe we want this on the bottom instead. Or maybe we, where's it at? Yeah, here's our chart title here. We could say historic or flood risk vulnerability. All right, the thing to note that's kind of a pain with this builder is that how it's brought in here, you can't convert to graphic and change it, right? So it's kind of like fixed upon the size of the things that you're building, right? We could go here, we could change all this stuff around, right? Legend text, we can make it not visible, visible, etc. We could turn the legend off completely, right? We could turn the title off completely. Where's that at? We could change this to a donut chart. One thing to keep in mind, right? Because this variable here changes till we come up here, what I like to do is turn everything off except for the data visualization, right? Because I can maximize the size, the placement of it, and then when I go to my chart properties, let's say I have yeah, let's turn this on real quick. I can see here, right, 60.6, 39.4. Maybe I want to write those values down, right? Keep that on a scrap piece of paper for a second so that I can turn this off, bring this in as my chart, say that's good to go, I like that. And then I'm going to actually build the legend by hand with these elements up here, right? I'll bring in some text. I can even bring in a polygon here and like kind of make the legend of this, for instance, right? And maybe that is what I want to do because it gives me a little bit more customization depending on my layout. These are all choices you can make in the process, depending if you want try to get your legend or your chart to look exactly the way you want it in the chart builder, then bring it in, right? Just remember, once you bring it in, you can't like convert the chart to a graphic itself and start editing it. All the editing has to be done in the chart builder tool, right? All the editing has to be done in this template here. Or you can just bring in the data visualization itself and then add different elements to it, right? Create your own legend, add text, etc., etc. Whichever way is easier for you, whichever way makes the most sense. I could bring in some text here, say give my title, customize it that way. So there's a lot of different ways to do the chart. The key is to get the data the way you want it to. Remember that the data in the chart is tied to the active map frame in the legend, and then active map frame in the layout, and then decide how you want to explain that chart. Do you want to use the built-in functions within the chart builder, or do you want to just bring in the visualization and build your own legend and title and percentages and labels and stuff as just objects? Either way works. Whatever suits your map layout, whatever suits the process better.